All right, everybody, welcome. Are we on time? Is this about the right time?
5:29.
5:29. We're going to get started 1 minute early, which has never happened. So I was telling Sandy earlier tonight that Rebecca typed out a script for me. That's how you know you have a great staff. But so I'm sharing, Rebecca, who schedules all of our programs, I'm sharing some thoughts from her tonight. So I'm Jeremy, I'm the library director. Thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca wanted me to let you know we have programs coming up, and what we have coming up is Thursday, May 26th, next week. We're going to have a virtual book discussion of the book, The Personal Librarian, because I picked the book. And I'm going to talk about it with the other library directors. Fiction books about librarians are kind of interesting to me, so that's what we're going to talk about. If you haven't read the book, it actually is a pretty good read. It's about, I don't know if you're familiar with J.P. Morgan, but J.P. Morgan had a lot of money. And J.P. Morgan spent a lot of money on artwork in a library, and this is about his personal librarian. So, and then Thursday, June 2nd, we are going to have an open mic night here. This will be the first open mic night that we've had. We attempted to have one during COVID at some point outside and nobody showed up. So we're going to attempt to do one in here, a little more comfortable. Open mic night for us means you can come with an instrument, you can perform, you can read something that you've written. You could probably give a speech, whatever it is that you need to say or perform, you can do it here. So think about that. And then Thursday, June 9th, another program we haven't had since before COVID is our Cookbook Club. And the way this works is there's a theme to it, and this in June it's going to be strawberries. So find a recipe, make a dish that includes strawberries, and then bring it, and everybody can have a little banquet and share what they've made. It's surprising what people come up with. And summer reading is coming up, and that's not just for kids. We are really making an attempt to encourage adults to read as well, and there are incentive prizes for adults to participate in summer reading. And if there's a particular incentive that you would really like to have to participate, maybe we could make that work. So we haven't acquired the prizes yet, but it is kind of fun. We try to give categories that you should find a book to read in that's outside of the normal area that you would read. It ends up, usually, I think people have a good time with it. So that's what we have coming up. But tonight you're here to see Kelly, and Kelly Timchak is the Lower Road Watershed Council Coordinator. Kelly has a BS in Wildlife Biology and a Master's of Science in Fisheries, and she's been working at the Lower Road Watershed Coordinator since May of 2012, and prior to that she worked with the Port Orford Ocean Resource Team and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and tonight she's going to talk to us about the Rogue River Estuary, so please welcome Kelly.
Thank you. Is this volume okay for everybody? Okay, good. It's a nice room with a lot of reverb. You guys have been probably noodling on this quote here as Jeremy's been chatting, or maybe you were fully focused on Jeremy, so take a moment here to take this quote in. I think it's a really beautiful one, and honestly, it's kind of the way that folks at the Curry Watersheds Partnership go about doing their work, I would say, on a daily basis. So today I'm going to talk to you about the Curry Watersheds Partnership because we are a really confusing bunch of people, I think. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the programs that we have and the type of work that we do. So I'll do a quick overview of that. Then we're going to go into like a really small bite of the Oregon history. and the people who are part of that. Then we're going to talk about why there is a need for a restoration in the Rogue Estuary. And then we'll go over the project highlights. So I'm actually going to talk specifically about the estuary restoration project we did last summer. We're going to go over that, and then we're going to talk about next steps and maybe how you all can get involved with any other work that we have moving forward. And also, this is super informal to me, so if people have questions or if you want to pop up with something, feel free to, just say it. All right, so I am one small part of the Curry Watersheds Partnership. We're a group that's been around since the 90s, and I would say it's always hard to talk yourself up, but we are a group of professional people. We are professional scientists, we're educators, and we are community conveners and organizers. We're also a non-regulatory group, which is a really, really important thing for us to let the public know that we do things with all voluntary people and all voluntary actions, which I think has been a huge part of our success to this day. It creates a lot of trust. The other thing we do is that we support our communities to care for our lands and our waters now and into the future. So this is a new mission we've taken on over the last few years, and mostly because it's easy to say. We had a really, really long one before about the economics and the well-being and the thriving, and this basically sums that up for us. So we've gone with that. The partners in the Curry Watersheds Partnership are the Lower Rogue Watershed Council. That's the group I'm with. The South Coast Watershed Council, the Curry Soil and Water Conservation District, who's the employer of record for everyone, and then we have a Curry Watersheds nonprofit. So we have a nonprofit arm, a special district arm, and then 2 watershed councils. So ideally in our little small community it works out really well because we all have different access to different funding pots, different partners in the community, and like I said, we've been all working together since 1994, so it's been a long, long time coming. Some of our programs are, they kind of come up and down, but most of them are the 4 I'm going to talk about. They've been here the longest, so they've come and they've stayed and they've grown. The first one is the youth education program. Some of you guys may be familiar with that or may not, but we have a really strong presence at the schools, both in Driftwood, up in Port Orford, and then down here at Riley Creek as well. And so we really focus on hands-on education. We really like to be in outdoor settings with kids. Anything that creates curiosity and makes the connections to critical thinking, and then also trying to create future stewards with our kids. So we really want them to make the community connection with the work that we're doing with them. And this comes in the form of lots of fun things. So this is Cassie Ripke up on the top left. She's with the Coquel Indian tribe. And she's doing an outdoor school showing them basketry and other methods and cultural tools that they use. She was a part of that. Steve Major, you might recognize in the top photo. We've done some work with ODFW, and they've come out and shocked some streams so that we can see what kind of fish are in there. The kids are really curious about what lives there. That's a driftwood garden photo on the right. Those are the kids. We have a really active program here at Riley Creek, but we have a pretty active program up there too, and we've had it only with the success of a lot of volunteers, and down here the Master Gardeners have been a huge part of that program. This is Jeffrey and Shelby on this bottom left. This is really cool because they actually went to Riley Creek together and then met there and then got married, which is really fun, and now they have kids here. So I put them on there. They're doing some riparian restoration down on Jack Creek in this photo. That's down in Brookings by Salmon Run Golf Course. And this is an old photo in the Rogue River cleanup photo, but I love it because everybody's babies are stuck in time, mine included. But we always have a big celebration, which I'll talk at the end. It's coming up June 4th, Rogue River cleanup, where we come out and we get together and run the whole river between here and Agnes, like at Foster Bar, and then clean it all up in between beaches, meet and have a big celebration. So we haven't done that in several years because of COVID, and we're really excited to get back to it. And then the picture on the right is actually Stella's 2 kids, Stacia's 2 kids, Stella and Jada, and they're working on some tree measurements at outdoor school as well. We have a fairly robust monitoring program. It's only 1 person currently, but he's doing a really good job of keeping pace with the projects we have going. Cindy Myers, you guys might know her. She's a long time in this community. She ran this program for like 15 plus years. She built an amazing structure and a great program of which we could bring someone else in to keep continuing that work. The purpose of the monitoring program is to help inform landowners and partners, in better ways that they can manage their resources. And then if they want to protect any of their watershed health areas as well. So we try to collect data that can inform to help make those decisions.
Who's running the monitoring program?
Robbie Laschek is running the monitoring program right now. And he's been here for, 3 years. I feel like it's like, oh, it's a year, but he's probably been here 3 or 4 years. COVID was like 6 weeks, right, or something like that. And some of the types of monitoring we do are fisheries monitoring. We do that in concert with ODFW. This is a bunch of little coho who are adorable, I think. And that's what we call smolt monitoring. So a lot of times in the spring, all these fish are headed out to the ocean, and so we're kind of tracking and counting who's going out of where. And these coho, one thing you can look at is their parr marks here. These guys are pretty skinny, and the space between the parr marks is bigger than the parr mark itself. So that's another way you can tell between coho and chinook. Now you guys have a fact to go tell your friends. We do a lot of water quality monitoring. This is actually a picture of Hunter Creek Estuary during an algal bloom, and we've done some research in the past to see like what's causing that. So those are kind of studies that we do across the watershed in different watersheds. We look at water quality. This is Erin Minster on the top right. She's looking at macroinvertebrates. That's another really good tool. Those are the bugs that live in the creeks that fish feed on and birds feed on. And they live in all the little spaces in between the rocks. And so that can tell you a lot about the health of your creek. A certain suite of bugs tells you if you're lacking or have excess of certain nutrients, ingredients, if you will, in your creek, and whether that's a healthy area. The one with me there is doing some large wood monitoring in Indian creeks. So we also monitor our projects that we've done in the past for effectiveness. Is this working? Is it creating the proper pools and the complexity that we're looking for? And then the right one is kind of obscure, but this is Shasta Costa Creek. And this is an Agnes, and this is a temperature monitor. So this little thing is called a hobo. And it lives there, and it takes a temperature every 30 minutes, and we usually leave them in all summer for about 4 months, and then you get your data at the end of the month, and you can see how the temperature changes diurnally, and then you can also look at where your longest, hottest days are of the year, and kind of use that as a trend data. And Shasta Costa has a long-term data set, so we keep our eye on that one. The weed management program, I would say it's probably our newest program, even though we've been doing it for a long time. I would say that, in 2004, early 2000s, we basically took over the Curry Weed Board from the county. So the county is in charge of weeds and mandated to take care of them, and then the Curry SWCD took that on, the Soil and Water Conservation District. And so that's when we really started a strong program and pushing forward with writing grants and getting more grants to funding to do the removal of these non-native invasive weeds. We created a bigger program, we tried to get more landowners involved, and then we also started working within the Oregon Department of Agricultural's noxious weed list. So now we look at all the state listed weeds, and then anything that comes up that's new. And that is a never-ending program. As you guys who live in Curry County well know, it's just insane with weeds in a lot of places. This is the mill bar. Oh yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Quick question.
Yeah.
When you have a situation like you have up at Elk River and the Gorse, how do you attack something like that?
It's pretty gnarly, first of all. Some of those landowners are like single tract landowners, so it'll be like one whole landowner, and we are working with several landowners in Elk River. But it becomes like a really large contract. Like we don't necessarily do that in-house. What we do is write a grant and get funding and then hire a team of people. And they actually bring big machinery out. How they've done it is they masticate it. So they mow it all down. They let it regrow a little bit. We actually do spray it in a lot of locations. And then we do that for 2 more years. And so that's just a long haul treatment. And then you still have to go in and remove plants continually because they do have a seed source for like 100 years. It's insane. So it's really hard to manage in those big, big places like that. But we're trying to tackle it at least a little bit. But I feel like it would be the most defeating job that we do, personally, but I'm glad the people that are in there are, like, still against it every day. It's great. The same with Millbar. I mean, I feel like that on the Rogue River. It's just full of Scotch broom. But we've been working on it for several years now, and Dustin just got a big grant last year to actually do the mowing and the spraying in there so that they can do a bigger swath of it. We clean it up every year for the Rogue River cleanup, but this is a much bigger effort. This is Drew Harper. He's our riparian program manager. This is him on the right. He's in a field of gorse. This is the Hubbard Creek drinking water area. But as you can see, maybe you noticed there are a couple conifers hiding in here. And so what we had gone and done that was cleared all that gorse, went in, replanted, and we're learning more all the time, Brian. We used to just clear it once and replant. The gorse ate everything up. So we're starting to learn we need to really back off and treat an area before we go in replanting. So he's doing some monitoring here himself where he's looking at survivability. You can see a teeny tiny Erin Minster here. And a sea of Javada grass, or what people know as pampas grass also. This is a big, big problem. There's a lot in Brookings. It's all over. She did a big program last year too.
Erin's our road's hero.
She
They got rid of it on
is.
our road, it's lovely.
See? And this is what we need, talking to other people who have had success. So they did hit it really hard last year, and they got a lot of funding to do that, like put something in the paper, reached out to folks to get more information, to come in and ask for help. Because this is basically a service that comes free to most landowners. It's lovely. Julia participates. This is a cool photo. I love this one. This is actually right down on the Mary D. Hume Trail, right in town here. But we treated this one too. This is Cape ivy, which is a very distinct kind of ivy, and we don't have it here, but in just a couple pockets. The Rogue is one place, but it's really not on southwestern Oregon. It's distinct in the fact that you'll notice that it has 5 lobes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And even ivy, when it's small, may look like that, but this stays very, very different. This is English ivy, over here, the dark green. And as you know, English ivy can be very bright green too, and when it's young, it can be a different color. But if you see this ivy anywhere, call me right away. Because this does not exist in a lot of places in southern Oregon, and we don't want it to. So that one's already been treated. The Oregon Department of Agriculture came down and treated that. And the last one, which is why we're here tonight. This is the restoration program, which is my favorite program. And this is basically going out in the world to restore the natural processes and also to bring back the functions that the watershed might have missed or has been disrupted by some other, person interruption is usually what happens. We like to get in and do things. So this can occur in the stream, and it can also occur out of the stream. So we have traditionally done more in-stream work, I would say. This is the large wood and all the things that go in the stream or, re-meandering a stream, things like that. But we have gone more to working also, we've done a lot of work with agricultural landowners. That's would be considered an uplands. And then more recently, too, we've been doing more forestry work. So we are working like up on Kimball Hill to restore oaks and meadows. We're working a lot on that kind of thing, too, because we realize that the whole watershed health is very important. And I just wanted to put this slide up. This has, I think, in people's heads, and maybe this is just me, but restoration often doesn't look like what people think restoration is. It's messy. It's basically like natural construction. There's still trucks. There's rocks and machines, and it's a big deal still. These trees here came off of Kimball Hill, but they were very gently removed. And if you go and watch these people who have this little niche work, there's a man, Mark Villers. He pulled these trees for us. So he goes and he ropes up the top, and he very gently just starts tugging on them after he loosens the soil all around so you can get the whole root wad out. Because that's what the fish want. They want all that root wad structure and the organic stuff. There's a really great, near-term benefit from having those right in the stream. So then he pulls that out, and they're very gentle, and they put it on. It's just amazing to watch these big trees fall. And then after, they still go in, they kind of fill back the holes in and, landscape the area and move it all around so that it's the least amount of disturbance as possible and a return to a natural
Is he a local guy?
He's out of Hughes Bay, is that where he is, I think? Yeah, I think, or Myrtle Point, somewhere, yeah, local. But he's the only one who does it. He was a logger though, in his previous days, and then learned that he could do this same work with his machines for restoration, which is amazing. And so that on the right there, this is actual picture from the estuary restoration, which we'll get into a little bit more later, but I just wanted you to see these big machines that go out there. And it's complex and it's complicated because this thing weighs so much, and if you've been out in the estuary, it's sloppy and slushy and muddy, and it can be. So first you have to build a wood crib, and then he parks out on that, and that starts to get a little, so you have to just be like really careful, very responsive. It's a totally different kind of work. This is him using his thumb on the excavator to put in the pin logs. So all the big logs go in the bottom, you get some other smaller logs on top, and then the pin logs are what hold everything in, and then that whole thing's going to get buried. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. And then this is kind of just a neat one. This is what we call a turbidity curtain, so that it keeps the area that you're working clean from the rest of the area. And so ideally you do all your work, put these curtains in place. It's like raft material, it's very thick, and chains on the bottom, and then it tucks in. And then you leave that sit overnight, and then pull it in the morning. Give you guys a minute to read this. Another beautiful quote. And I feel this deeply, I feel like, for this area. I just think it's fascinating, all the history that is going on in this area. A big part of that history is the American Indians that have come before us, before our time. You guys have probably seen several of these pictures. But these are all different tribal members of different tribes of Rogue River Indians, folks who lived in the area. And then the plank house, which hopefully we'll have someday soon, and a traditional style of housing that occurred here in the Rogue. I am not a professional or a historian, so if you guys have deep questions about this, I'd love to ask someone else. But I love it. And then we have us, and then we have the other people who come in, a little bit later in time, still a very rich history on the land. They see all the resources that are here to have. We cut a lot of our really big trees down, but at the time we didn't know better. That's what, is part of living. There's a lot of famous people associated with the Rogue, which is fun. John Wayne and Clark Gable and Zane Grey, and they used to spend time here, which is interesting, I think. But yeah, you can see the sea of logs up here. I thought this was a fascinating photo. They're just floating them down a river, but that's a lot of wood. That's a lot of wood. But it's a fascinating time, I think, to live here. This top middle picture is a really cool photo. It's like ferrying across the Rogue River before the bridge was in. So those two little kind of land masses you see, it's Watershed and Gold Beach. This one I feel like we've all seen 100 million times, these hog lines, but they're pretty funny. But yeah, so I don't know how you get past all that stuff if you're a fish, or if you want to take that many fish in one day. It's a lot of resources.
What's that bottom left
Yeah.
picture?
This guy, oh yeah, it's kind of fuzzy, but it's they're river runners. So there's several boats here coming down the road, and they got their camp here, campfire and smoke. Early folks floating the river. So that was more of like a recreation photo, which I thought was cool. Crazy. I had another picture and I took it off and it was like 3 boats flipped over in the middle. I thought, oh my gosh, those big wooden boats all like trying to haul those out full of water. Holy cow. Then you got this guy. This is Mr. Hume. So he is referred to as the Salmon King of Oregon. However you may think about that. But basically in 1877 he came here and got all the lands that were like 12 miles up the road. So he owned basically the entire lower Rogue River on the end. And the whole estuary and up above that even. And then he had a monopoly on salmon fishing for like the next 30 years in the Rogue. And he did a really good job of exacerbating that. And he tried, there were lots of efforts. He brought in eggs, he was catching fish out of the Columbia and bringing them here, and from the Klamath and all over, like trying to get other bigger stock and bring them in. Despite all the efforts, the salmon took a tank. And so in 1935, the state did close the river to commercial fishing. So that was a good thing. But I think it's just, in some human nature that it's like, we're just using it up. And that's what was going on at that time. Right? That's the same feeling I had when I read this one. I was like, that is good. Yeah. And they say, Hume has a really, they had a funny quote about him. He was a keen observer of the salmon's natural history, although he did not always interpret his observations correctly. So, it's just, I think it's a human condition. You make an assumption or you make a hypothesis and maybe that's not the right one. You start seeing salmon declining. We're, losing a lot of logs. We're losing a lot of land from things falling in. And eventually, even coming into like the 70s and 80s, we're pulling resources like crazy. And then we're pulling all the wood out of the stream because the salmon can't get up. And so we've got to get all the wood out of the stream. And, these are all like learning pieces that we do as people, but huge missteps, turns out. Turns out what's really, really important, aside from the whole entire watershed, is an estuary. The estuary really is this vital interface where your freshwater and your saltwater species are meeting and mixing. And it's not only, I'd like you to think about an estuary too, is it's not only everything that lives in your estuary, it's actually a whole connected system of estuaries along the coast of California, Oregon, Washington. And these creatures who are in the ocean are also tucking in to each of these estuaries and using them at times. So it's not only just everything that lives here, it's other species. And waterfowl, and overwintering and migrating birds. And even though they're very small parts of the watershed, they're supremely important. So it's just really important, I think, that we keep an emphasis on our estuaries. So, the importance of estuaries to salmon. Obviously, I think a lot of you guys probably know that the salmon travel through the estuary. Everything that goes up to Medford travels through the estuary. And so it's really important that be clean, good quality, habitat availability, be as good as it can be. But it's a really big transition zone for juvenile salmon. And so what they're doing a lot of times, there's two places that they kind of utilize this in their lives, is when they're heading out to the ocean in order to go out there and stay out there for 3 or 4 years, and grow and get big, and then come back and spawn. And so what they need at that time is they need a safe place where they can, what they call acclimate. So they're getting used to salt water, they're feeling that in their gills, their body is actually going through all these physiological changes at that time too. It's a really interesting process if you ever want to just like dig into all the things that happen within their bodies. But it's a really critical phase of their life in order for them to go out. And obviously the more food they can eat, the more prepared they are for the transition, the better they're going to be off out in the ocean. You want them to be big. The biggest wins, a lot of times. So it's just really crucial and important that we have enough space for those fish to be there. And now that being said, our estuary in the Rogue anyway, it is, naturally small. Like it's not only because we've goofed it up. It is kind of a smaller estuary too, and the fish have also, adjusted life histories accordingly around that. So they do utilize it a little less time. The other portion that they use it for is for, in the winter, a lot of times if the main stem's just like hauling and full and dirty and big, they want to get off of that area and move out to the areas where they can actually eat and rest and not get in the turbidity and the sediment in the water. And in the winter, more of those areas fill up, so there's a lot more areas they can spread out and get more food. So I love this picture. I have another one, which I'll show in a minute, but it's kind of like how do we get here? This is what I've been talking about the whole time. I think it's just a series of events, and how life has played out, but we do have a really developed estuary in the Rogue. So the fact that we've already minimized the amount that we have. I think there's about 27 acres or so of marshland that we've also kind of limited out, which is also a really big food production area for birds and fish. This is fascinating though. This is actually, the bridge is here. There, here, it's upstream a bit. This is a 1939 photo though. So it's just huge. I love this estuary. I want this estuary. And this is the boat basin and the estuary as it is today. And the Rogue is fascinating because it's this massive, massive watershed. It's huge. It's 215 miles long. It goes all the way through the Cascades. It starts at Crater Lake. If you guys didn't know that already, which is the deepest lake in North America, or in the USA. It's pretty fascinating. But it's 5,000 square miles. That's a lot of river. And the estuary is like almost 900 acres, which feels in my head, wow, that's a lot. But that's like 1.3 square miles for 5,000 square miles. That's not much. That's a lot of support to have to provide for such a big river. So this is the other picture I love. This is like a 28 is what it's labeled. So really, it's a small size compared to its overall watershed. But it is, like I said, naturally constrained by the mountains and some other features as well. It has a really steep gradient to it as well. It has limited space for estuary habitat for fish, so we feel like every little bit counts. So even if you can gain an acre here and an acre there, that's really, really, really important. And so that's where the Watershed Council has been digging in. Oh, bomb. I think we have a big responsibility, especially since we do hold power to make changes in the river and the power to bring people together to make changes in the river. I do feel a big responsibility around that, and it is part of our mission. And I think that we would all like to continue to share that power with more people and more people who don't currently have that power. This is another great thing I like to think about the estuaries and the rivers, because if people always say, let's bring the salmon back, or we got to get the salmon back. And to me, I like to think of it as returning the rivers to the salmon. Like this is their gig. We kind of came along and screwed it up a little bit, but this is really their area. So what we want to really do is really key out any habitat opportunities that we have anywhere from the headwaters to the estuary. And we do work really closely with the Rogue Basin Partnership. They're the group that has all the watershed councils up in Medford. And so we keep a close eye on those guys to make sure that all the projects we're doing are really coordinated, or if we're going after funding, we're doing that holistically so that we all know what's happening here. We do believe life, history, diversity, that's like the different runs. So if you can think about like spring salmon versus, or spring Chinook versus fall Chinook, or summer steelhead versus winter, those are all really individual life history patterns. So they have evolved over time to come into the river at different times, clue in on different temperatures, all these sort of things. So that is the key to resilience. If we can maintain the diversity of those runs, I think that's the key to the resilience of the salmon. It's also key to their productivity. Like anything, if there's only one of you, and then you go away, nobody is resilient, so you can't continue that on. So again, we're just looking at, sort of correcting or, auto-correcting just a little bit in places where we can, where the opportunities exist, in order to really allow the most expression of these life histories. So now we're going to get into the meat of it, and then we just have a whole bunch of pictures, which is great. So limiting factors for the Rogue. This is a great picture of Bill and Paulette Hobbins. They're board members on my Watershed Council. They live right on the estuary here, and so they get to kayak it daily, which is amazing. But limiting factors for the Rogue are these reduced shallow water habitats, backwater habitats. As I said, if you can think about how productive marshes and those shallow water habitats that do have a lot of bugs and cover and hiding and all those kind of things, those are really beneficial for juvenile salmon, among many other species. We do have reduced food resources due to what's called macro detritus, which is basically like marine trash. That's a funny a funny name for that. But we don't have a lot of things in our estuary that really catch, like tidally influenced marine trash. And if you know anything about chemistry, a marine environment brings in a lot of different kinds of nutrients that are important for the river. So it is important to bring in those different things. We have a loss of connectivity. We've had areas that are, shut off or pulled off or they're high. Some of those are natural. Some of those are due to land practices, land management practices. There's loss of access to off-channel habitats, and then the complexity. Even this is where we've done some of our work. It looks really nice, but really what you'll notice when you're in there is it's just kind of a straight channel with only willows, and there's like no wood in the creek. It's all the same depth. It's really not that complex. And I highly doubt we all want to live in a hallway for the rest of our lives. Yes, ma'am.
So what's an example of the macro detritus?
Like nitrogen and phosphorus, it's like bringing in those kind of nutrients. But like
So what would bring
debris,
that in?
organic debris. So poop, wood.
Whose poop?
It could be anybody's poop, otter poop, fish poop, bird poop.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird
But
concept.
not like cattle or sheep?
No,
Okay.
no, not cattle and sheep poop.
Okay.
Good question. And I've only hit the tip of the iceberg on the macro detritus. I'm like, marine trash, that's weird. And sometimes too much of it is too much. Like we found with Hunter Creek, in some instances, that those algal blooms, they weren't derived just solely from the creek. Some of that was marine trapped nutrients that came in, it closed off, and then they have these blooms because there's too much nitrogen or something like that. Yeah. Cranmeal Slough, you're probably going, where the heck is Cranmeal Slough? It is God Wants You Slough, if anybody's familiar with that name. That's the street name in Golden Beach, I would say, that people know. But the name on the map is Cranmeal, so we started calling it that after also hearing from some of our tribal partners that they didn't really like the name God Wants You Slough. So we said, all right, let's do it. Let's call it its real name. So this is in the Rover Estuary. This is a big blow up here, so you can see the bridge. And then we're kind of up, if you know where Freeman Rock gravel is, it's basically just right downstream from there. You can even see that's part of the gravel pit at Freeman Rock. So it's just telling you about all those limiting factors: loss of connectivity, loss of complexity, access to habitat, quality habitat. And so this was one of the places we identified in the lower road during a prioritization process we did in 2012. Where we looked at places to do conservation or restoration. And this was rated as a high priority area, and also the Saunders Slough area above there was rated as high priority as well, and so we're tackling those priority places at this time. So what we found with this one is that there is a lot of availability of this off-channel habitat. It's off the main stem of the river. It's very accessible, generally at all tidal locations, or tidal times. You can still get in there, and it is calm, and there's lots of vegetation in there. But it was lacking in cover and hiding places. So the places in the water that they can really get in, and pools. There's no really nice cold pools. It's cool in there. The good part about this slough is it has a lot of what you call hyperrheic flow. So it's the flow that's coming in through the groundwater. So it's kind of in flux all the time. But it's getting a lot of ocean hyperrheic flow too, so there's a portion in there that stays about 54 degrees year-round, which is really, really good for summer rearing habitat for fish. And then it was another great place. As you can see, there's not really houses around it. I know you can see these houses right here, but this is really steep. That's a really big, longer than the ceiling is tall, up to those houses. So it was a really great area where we could actually do some work to let the water inundate more without any repercussions to people's property or getting in on somebody's business. And then again, it has more area. So if you shape that out and slope that out, you can have more area for fish to get into. So what I've been talking about here is just restoration. It's how we modify the ecosystem, how we alter it in a little bit of way. And we want to just, like I said, restore the function. It's not necessarily to just make it right then. It's to try and put things in place so that a process starts, so that it can start doing its own work. That's our ultimate goal. Is I don't want to keep doing work there. I want to give you a little push, and I want you to remember how you used to do it. like I said, restoring processes, and also, like I mentioned earlier, it can be really messy. Sometimes I think people get really turned off by the process, but the ultimate goal is to have a better long term. If you think about it in the fact of like open heart surgery, good Lord, that is not a pretty thing, like not at all. And it's terrifying, and it's ugly, and it's bad, and for the first few years it may not look right, but eventually those scars heal up, and you're better off, your quality of life is probably better, your longevity is better, and your body starts doing things the way it's supposed to do again, because you had a little, you needed a little something. So I think of it in that way. When I'm trying to explain it to people, it's like, it's ugly, but it's going to get real pretty, and it's going to be so much better. We hope. So, we're to the project. This is two simple things. We're basically adding large wood in the slough to do the cover and to bring also organic matter in, bugs and things like that. We want it to catch gravel, we want it to catch other debris. And then we're going to reshape the banks, well we did, reshape the banks a little bit to allow more inundation instead of just, sea rise that goes in between a hallway. So that does, like I said, just adds more area. It's like an easy way to get quantity without like opening up a whole new spot. This is all I was going to show you because it's way more technical than what I'm talking about. So we hire engineers, they come in and they make all these fancy designs. And then we have them do this and make sure we go, yeah, it's not going to go away when the road floods at 100,000 CFS 4 times next year. It's going to be fine. And then we come in and we do it. So, this is the portion on Elephant Bar, God Wants You Slough, Cranville Creek, all the same thing. Now we're just going to plug through a few pictures and enjoy this. So, this is the estuary looking upstream. You can see Freeman Rock here. This is where we did the work, was in this little arm over here on the right.
Now, is that right across from Indian Creek?
I'm going to get to that one next. Yeah, there's 2 spots, so with the Cranville and the Indian Creek, yep. And then this is the slough, again, where we did the work, right here on this section. You can see this part right here. This is a part that was disconnected before, so it doesn't really have good flow. There's no really connection in the tidal zone between when that's in and that's getting water in and out. So it has fairly not good water quality. So one of the ideas was that we would grade the area in between that existing slough and this one. So this is during construction. You can see now all the tracks coming in. We're moving around. But I just wanted you to see it because it's kind of surprising at like how much not destruction there is. They're very, very careful with these pieces of equipment, big as they are. But we try to get in there and be fairly small with the, ruining any vegetation, because otherwise we just have to grow all that back. And this is right after implementation. So this is all 7 years in the making. 7 years. We do the prioritization, we do the board, we write like 6 grants, we get all this stuff, and it all happens and it's over in like 2 weeks. It's crazy. But this is it. So now they've laid slash. All the trees they had to take down to put there, they put them all back over there. And that's to keep the sediment in place, keep the soil in place, so hopefully it doesn't all run out and run down into the slough. And then also a lot of those are willows, so when they're bringing them in, they're stabbing them back in. I mean, go out there. There are already a ton of willows coming up. This was a freebie log from Mother Nature. Again, this is a before. This is Bill and Paulette, again, kayaking in the slough, a before shot. This is right in the middle of summer, so a lot of plants in there. And this is during construction. You can see the excavator here working with the turbidity curtain there. And then that's right after. So again, they laid all the willows out, we seeded, we lay straw, and then in the winter, we replanted it. And then this is just a good photo. This is, there's a beaver dam in there that's down at the very end of the slough. This is sitting at the beaver dam looking up, and then this is post-project. So, not a huge difference. Again, a very light touch. It's just like getting some wood in the creek for fish to use. There's so many beaver in there now too. Like it's just so busy. They really just got in there and got busy. This is that top slough that was disconnected, and a little bit of a different angle, but this is the wood in there and at a higher tide, but it's definitely much more connected now. This is what that looks like when you're standing on it. at the very top. There's a lot of wood in there now. Now we're going off to Indian Creek. Yeah, so we did this in 2 locations, one in Indian Creek and, one in Cranville. So this is a drone shot. This is basically the cafes, like right here. This is the parking lot across from Indian Creek Cafe. You can kind of see the little bit of a thing in there. This is a really cool project. The Knoxes did this like in 2000. They actually built those ponds. This is an old area that was like a fill from when they built the jetties originally. They put all the fill there. And so this is kind of a man-made spot anyway. Now that's right after. So then they've gone in and put all the wood in and laid the slash down. This is just a great shot because I feel like it's like, how did you even get in there with your machine? Yeah, it was a bigger machine than we wanted to have too, but Chuck was amazing. He was the best operator. I have so much respect for people running those machines now. It was incredible. You've seen this shot, the turbidity curtain working. So this is the night before, after we finished the project, and this is the morning after. So you basically want it to be clear on both sides, and then they'll go in and pull that curtain out. And that way the sediment stays put. This is a photo from 2000. So this is when they first installed these ponds, just shortly after. And so this is, if you guys have been on this trail, there's that bridge now that's from the old bridge, and you can walk across that little piece that's on the Indian Creek Trail, the rotary trail. And this is 2002, so a couple years after that. If you've been out there too, it's just fascinating to see how much has changed. And then this is what it looks like now. So there's the bridge in the background. Again, a little bit of a different shot. The rotary bench is over here. Lots of wood in there. And that's a shot from the same location, kind of looking over towards the rotary bench. So it looks messy, doesn't it? I love it. Again, this is the 2000 photo of the original. The cool thing is we left all these original stumps in there too. Like we can still pinpoint all the stumps that they put in initially, and that's what it looks like now. So there's just a lot more openness. They excavated in there too and created more area, more habitat. That's just it's a much bigger area now. And those are just some more beauty shots from there. This isn't a channel that goes through Indian Creek on the roadside. You can kind of see the wire lines up there. That's where the Indian Creek Road is on that side. So you're facing that way. So, coming to the end here, there is still work to be done. We're currently doing a lot of monitoring out there. We want to see if what we're doing is working, if it was the right thing to do, if we needed to do more, if we need to shift that. So we're looking at vegetation monitoring, seeing what's coming up naturally first. We're also looking at fish presence, and then we're looking at temperature as well, and then pools. So we'll do pool counts and pool complexity.
Are the fish that are coming up there going up to the hatchery, or?
No, they're usually just tooling around, looking for food, yeah, getting away from predators. I don't know, Laura, any other reasons why they're up there? Yeah, that's good. That's all right. Yeah. So that's what we're doing out there. And so I would love to come back in a couple of years too. My husband said, don't you have any graphs to show anybody? I said, no. Well, what is it doing? Is it working? I said, I just did it in July. Like, I think so. Give me a second. So I've been harassed to come back with some real data. So I'll try to do that. We're going to do a tour this summer, though. I'd love to bring everybody out there this summer in August. I'm thinking would be a really great day. I picked this time because it's a really good tide, mid-tide, and then we can see a lot of how it's working, what it looks like. You can watch the tide come up as we're out there chatting about it. And I think that would be really fun and informative. The other thing I want to plug is the Rogue River Cleanup. That's June 4th. If you haven't signed up, we have a website, prairie-watersheds.org. Anybody can sign up. You can clean up your own street if you want to. That's a really great thing to do too. And then long term, we're working on a couple projects. One on Elephant Bar where we're looking at making a new rearing area, which is really great. That would expand the estuary by about 7 acres, which is really amazing for the estuary. And then addressing some water quality issues in Saunders Slough, which is the slough right above here. Last plug. How can you guys help? This is the best part. That's a beautiful elderberry out at Indian Creek. Financial gifts. That may sound silly, but everything we do is fully grant funded. I write a grant so that I can do my job. So I write a grant for my work, and then I write grants to do more work. So we all write grants. There isn't any like solid funding in our organization. So we're really trying to work towards a model where we are remembering to remind people of that, and that it does take money to make these things go. So anyway, you can always make a financial gift in any way, shape, or form. We have a website that has recurring payments, or just a one-time, or if you want to give us your entire estate, you know, whatever you guys are up to. Think about the future. You can participate in our programs. So like Julia is one of those who got some of her Jubati grass taken care of. Tim's helping us cut trees on Kimball. There's lots of people in the community that are a part of this already. And so we are really happy for that. And you guys are the ones who are passing this information on to other people to continue to do the work. Volunteer to clean up or citizen science event. And then also spread the word. Be a steward, be a champion, and tell everybody about the great work that's been going on, and pass that along to everybody. So, that's it. There you go. If you want any of that, you can look at that. That was extras. I'm like, what if they ask? Anybody? No? Yes? Ooh, yes. Ooh.
Jack, yeah.
Oh, Jack. Bring it.
Yes, I've asked you to ask you, what does the dredging have any effect on this?
I think yes.
Is it good or bad for the?
It's not great timing.
For this?
Yeah, it's my personal and slightly professional opinion is that it's a poor timing. It's a lot of rock, and it is during a time when juvenile salmon are exiting the river, and they're usually still trying to like eat a lot of food and get big and get going before they head out. So I think it will have an effect. I think they're going to do it this summer, it sounds like, because they didn't get to do it last summer. They had some failed equipment and stuff. But it is a lot of material. This year in particular, I think it's like 400,000 cubic yards. They usually take about 40 to 60,000 cubic yards on an average year. So it's like, you know, tenfold. It's a big increase, and they're trying to do it for like a deferred maintenance kind of a thing, you know, to try and not come back and do it in the next few years. But I think you'll see it. I think you'll see, you know, in another 4 years or 5 years when that return is coming back, you'll probably see that in low fish numbers. That's just my opinion.
I would think with all that big equipment, fish wouldn't want to come anywhere near. I mean,
Yeah.
as a fisher person.
No, yeah, it's mostly just because you're taking the areas that have the food. I don't think it's about trapping the fish
No, not
necessarily.
everybody, but
Yeah.
There's a lot of activity going on.
Yeah. It's just the food disturbance. It's like me taking your plate away. No. Like, you're not bothered by that, maybe. Maybe you'll go over there, but like, maybe I'll take that plate away too. Well, you know. I think that's what it is. I think it's just a food source thing, so I think that's what you'll see. You'll either see like maybe a lower body condition of those fish, and maybe they won't have as much survivability. I think it'll be something, but yeah, no, but you know, it's important for some people too. I'm not against it. I'm not sure what the answer is, to tell you the truth.
The overall health of the estuary, aside from the fish, it's going to be better.
Yeah.
Can't tell.
I think it's improving.
It'll help it out, or make it work.
The dredging?
Yeah, the dredging will let more water come out, so it comes in and out of the mouth. Because you're moving that, you know, all that sand.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really big, complicated. I mean, it's been so.
It's kind of a gamble.
Yeah, I'll give it that. This river has so much gravel to give. We are gravel excessive. And if you look at all the studies that USGS, the Geologic Society, has done, it's definitely what they call, it's not transport limited. It's definitely giving as much transport as you can put in. So which is why every time they dredge, it continues to fill in and fill in and fill in. So it doesn't seem to be able to flush itself really well.
Right, so now if it flushes itself better during the winter,
Yeah.
with all the harder rains, it's going to affect you guys' area.
I don't think so. I mean, that's a great question, but I don't think so. It's in a really, you know, rivers are rivers. The main channel was on that side of the river in the past. The south bank was the main channel for a long time, and then it skipped way over to the north bank. It went on the other side of Elephant Rock, and then now it's in the middle again. So I wish we could give it more freedom to do what rivers do, which is to move around a lot, which is hard when you have property and land and, agricultural
Or we have 2 dams, right, to keep it from fully flushing the
Yes.
way it used to.
That's definitely a major problem because it doesn't have the flow, capacity that it used to have, which is, again, has saved a lot of people's things and stuff, roads, resources, but
So basically, you're fighting a pretty heavy war then.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, it's tough. It's a different use, of the river. I am all for them making sure that there's safe passage to the ocean for the fishermen, for the Coast Guard. I think that's super important, super necessary. Do we need to open up a bunch of areas above the bridge or places so people can fish? I don't think necessarily. I think that's just going to change over time, like it always has. Some days the bank guys are hitting it, some days the river guys are hitting it. Places fill in, they flush out. Even the bar that's under the bridge and over on the mailboat side. I mean, I've only been here 17 years and that thing's been in and out and in and out. I'm sure a lot of you know.
I'm just curious, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to.
No, don't be sorry. It's a big question, it really is, and I think that people should talk about it, actually, because it just lands in commissioners' laps or Army Corps' laps, and I think that people should have a little bit more say in it.
What about the lamprey eel population? We came to a thing here.
Stuart Reed, wasn't he wonderful? I know, I'd love to bring him back. Would you guys like to see him again? He's done a lot more work. Yeah, well, after that, he came here and we did some studies. We found several in Saunders. We found them in Lobster Creek. We found them in, I think, Wasatna. So he's kind of doing a study all along the south coast. But they are only in pockets here that he could see. But that was a very quick, just presence absence. Is it here? How many are here? That kind of a thing. So we're trying to get him some more money to come here and do some more studies here. He's also working with Port Orford at Hubbard Creek to make sure they have that water intake system in the dam to make sure that lamprey can get up and over that. He's created all these solutions that are just super, to grinding the edge off. It's pretty cheap and solvable and until something better. But I would love to have Stuart back.
And they were so good for the health of the river.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember how long they lived.
It's 9 years. They live in the gravel.
Yeah, before they even come up.
Yeah.
I was
So that's actually another, you don't even think about all these things. We went out too, and we did find a whole bunch of amicetes, which are the little ones that live in the gravel. We found several of those over in the mailboat slough, where that is, and so those things live, in the gravel in places too, and you wouldn't even know it. Until, they have places where they've, scooped them up, and there's thousands. It's just crazy. Yeah, anyway. If you guys have suggestions for that, other people too, just let me know, because the Watershed Council always wants to bring some more presentations here too that are really watershed related. So I'll see if I can get Stuart to come back over. Yeah. I appreciate you guys being active listeners. I know it's yakking at you for an hour, so. Okay, yeah. It was only 30 minutes at my house. I guess I was getting carried away. Okay. Yeah, thanks guys.